This episode contains strong language from the start. Hello and welcome to Life in Stereo, the show where we explore life through the music that shaped us. Each episode I sit down with our guests to talk about the albums, songs and gigs that mean the most to them. The ones that bring back memories, make us feel and even change who we are. I'm Matthew and I'm your host, and today my guest is a hobby and hero of mine. If you're into painting miniature plastic figures for tabletop warfare, he'll be no stranger to you. It's only Alex from the YouTube channel 52 Miniatures. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you, Matt. It's great to be here, and it's good to see your face.
Oh, thank you very much. I decided to use a big zoomed-in camera so that you can see more of my massive head and face, but
that's lovely.
Luckily the listeners don't have to put up with that. But if you are familiar with Alex's channel, you will see he's in his beautiful new studio setup with all those lovely paints in the background. We have been talking quite extensively about miniature painting, but we're here for the audio goodness.
Indeed.
Alex, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. It's Saturday today, right? But I seem to be stuck working anyway. It's kind of the story of my life at times. But I'm well. We've got winter happening. So it's snow and things. I'm in Sweden, by the way. So trying to get used to the fact that I can't walk around in sandals and enjoy a drink in the sun anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm in Manchester. Sandals and drinking in the sun is never an option. It's trying its hardest to snow here. It's just a darker shade of grey.
I have been to Manchester a few times, and I'll agree.
yeah, you won't hear me arguing back there. So if I didn't give away too much from the introduction, I just want to let people know who you are and also what type of role music played in your life.
Sure. So I'm Alex. I'm an old man at heart, and hopefully not look like too much of an old man, but middle-aged. And I work as a photographer. Essentially, that's been the majority of my working life, has been a photographer. But a few years back, I started a YouTube channel as well, which is called 52 Miniatures. And it centers around the world of having a hobby that is miniatures, tabletop miniatures, predominantly. Painting them, stroking them, and enjoying them, playing games and things like that. And nowadays that, probably the time I spend on things takes up a lot more time than actually my real job does. But I still do the two, so to speak. And I live in Stockholm, in Sweden. And it's funny, you reached out, Matt, and I was a bit surprised about the music focus, because I just read the first, sort of, hi, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, it's going to obviously be about miniatures and miniature painting. But then I realized there was this music focus, and I really thought it'd be fun to talk about it, because music has also been a pretty big thing in my life. Not only, we're going to go through a lot of songs and stuff like that, but I've also dabbled quite a bit with music production myself. I used to run a little music studio.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I still have it, actually, but I used to record bands, essentially, and produce bands and mix music and stuff like that. And I did it quite intensively, but say it was my hobby, but same as, my hobby was also miniature painting, but I started a YouTube channel. It's the same kind of thing with music, creating music. I used to play a lot in bands and stuff like that, and then slowly built up ways to record my own bands, and then realized I could do this for others, and did that quite extensively for a while, but then sort of toned it down, and then it completely died during the pandemic, essentially. There was not much happening in music studios during the pandemic, especially not. It was still on, I'm going to say, very basic levels compared to high grade professional studio, but it was
Yeah.
still I was still able to bring in bands and record full bands and mix and do all of that. So all in all, I music is a pretty big feature in my life. So I thought this would be a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said yes, definitely. What
Mm.
sort of things did you record to? What was your preferred DAW of choice? Are you a Pro Tools user, or did you use stuff like Cubase or
I'm a Logic guy,
yeah,
and also um, trying to not use as many things as possible. So I had a time where I invested all the money I made out of recording bands and stuff like that was reinvested into the studio. So there's quite a lot of so-called outboard gear, just hardware essentially. So I've always tried to have a bit more of a hands-on approach and not really to sort of see the computer a bit more as just a way to press record. But obviously when mixing, post-production and stuff like that is a lot more just in the box.
yeah,
And but I've always been very sort of simple with it, and I've always just liked to record bands that can play a song live and try and record it live in the studio. There's never been extensive post-production things. No, there's no,
mm,
a band comes in, you spend 2 weekends or something like that, you record an album and you mix it for a week or whatever, and then you're done, kind of a thing. I've always appreciated the feeling of the fact that there's people playing the music
yeah,
and that there's people who's written the music and it's their song. And I've never been the sort of the producer that tries to change things much. I can have recommendations in terms of, you know, maybe if we switch these things out, you'll hear the vocal better. Or maybe if we just add something more in the chorus, then it'll sound like a chorus,
yeah, yeah,
just small, simple things. But I never go in and change what people bring in that much. Because, yeah, I I just adore the fact that we humans even can make music, essentially. And it's just absolutely, it's one of the best feelings that I think, I can put it up there in the top 10 of like not emotional situations, but just wow, this is so cool, is when you sit in a control room and you have an entire band that is playing a song live and you've mic'd it all up and it sounds great, and you're in the control room and you hear it through the speakers and you think, I'm listening to an album, and you realize, no, wait a minute, that they're just in that room next door
yeah,
doing this right now. That's just a fantastic feeling.
yeah. What's your favorite instrument then? What's the one that gets you all the time?
I mean, I'm a guitar, because I play as well. So
Yeah,
I'm a guitar fan. I would lie if I said anything else than just electric guitar is what gets me going. Um, but I'm a great fan of I guess the root of all things, which is drum and bass, not as in the style of music, but as in the drums and bass is like the foundation of all things. And if you have a solid drummer and a solid bass player, and it sounds good, then you can do whatever you want with the rest of the song. It's just gonna
mm,
sound good. But instrument wise, personally, I think it's electric guitar. In the type of music that I've been recording, which is essentially, indie rock.
yeah,
If we look just in general, like if there's an instrument where I am in the room and that instrument is being played and it amazes me, well, it's piano.
mm,
Um, I guess it's the combination of being able to play, you know, everything,
Yeah.
bass and whatever, and rhythm and all of it on the same instrument, but also just the sound of it. It just makes me tingle sometimes.
Yeah, I watched a video last night with my wife about a young lad on a bass doing like the difficulty of like rock music on the bass, and you just see the effort and the concentration and the practice that's gone into it,
Mm.
and I suppose it's like your miniature painting. No one gets that good overnight, and you can just see the hard work that's poured out of this young kid, and it was amazing just to hear and just watch him go.
Yeah,
It's like, wow,
yeah, yeah.
that's incredible. That's why I was a bass player for like 3 minutes, and
Same, same. But it's as you say, it's like that with everything in life, really. Like you can touch miniature painting as well. If you watch a YouTube video with someone, you know, painting a miniature, and you just look at them and go, how did that even happen? I just saw the brush just move the miniature like 4 times,
mm,
and it looks perfect. If I do that, you know, it just looks that it's red now. You know, that's the only thing that happens. Um, and it's exactly the same with music. You go see a band or something on stage, and you just see some bass guy or whatever just standing there, not really fussed. But the amount of hours that go into getting to that kind of just, you know, automatic response to the tools you have in your hand,
yeah.
and how to deal with them is it's more than those 10,000 hours, I believe.
Oh yeah, indeed, indeed. Did you grow up in a musical household?
I mean, yes and no, I guess. None of my parents have ever played any instruments, and my mum has never really intensively listened to music at all. She puts on the radio if the news is on, kind of a thing. But my dad is very into music, and especially, I mean, yeah, he's always been very into music, but I guess especially at a younger age. He's from England,
Yeah.
so he moved to Sweden back in the 70s, I guess, and he was from the north of England, but moved to London to pretty early, and you know, was part of that whole. You know, he'll tell the stories of going to watch Pink Floyd play at some weird college club or whatever, and
Yeah.
You went out to buy all the new records that came along at the time, which was the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and that whole thing. And so he played a lot of music when I was a kid. Unfortunately, he was in a phase of pretty much only listening to Frank Zappa,
Right.
which I've listened to a lot of music, and you know, a lot of it is just about taste and what we can relate to. And I fully accept that Frank Zappa is a glorious musician and songwriter, but I just can't get it. I've never got it. I just can't get it. It doesn't do anything for me in a lot of senses, you know. And I can listen to some songs and I go like, wow, this is, you know, the production is insane, the musicianship is over the roof, but it's just not my personal cup of tea. So I was usually just annoyed with him when he was playing music because because he was always Frank Zappa. What he did, however, was have a pretty extensive record collection, especially of you know, the stuff that he brought with him from England, which is the, you know, the 60s and 70s stuff. And I guess that was my way into music, and what probably has colored most of my taste is through his record collection. And the fact that, even the fact that you could actually just collect records, you could buy records, you can listen to music. It's not always the case for people that grow up in a household where there's no music. Then you don't actually realize that it can be a thing. So he definitely turned it into a thing for me. and probably colored my entry into music more than I would have wished, I guess, or maybe not.
Do you remember there being a particular band or artist that you were quite into when you were growing up, or from your dad's collection?
Yeah, I mean, it was I'm afraid it will be evident throughout this podcast that in the grander scale of things, I'm kind of stuck in old music, and I don't really listen to much new released music. A lot of the time, if not stuck in the 60s and 70s, then stuck in music produced by artists that come out of the 60s and 70s, and sort of firmly believe that a lot of, there's so much great new music that comes out, but a lot of it I just feel like, well, this is just someone trying to make a Beatles song or whatever. Like there was so much foundations put in place at that time that but yes, I actually let's see, because I had to prepare yesterday because I read your what you wanted to talk about, and I had to look through my collection. So I brought some records just to refresh my mind. And I think the answer for, like, at an early age of what I was obsessed with, I had to give it a bit of think because I don't have a good memory. I've got one of those brains that tends to forget things that have, go past 2 years back and I forget whatever happened in my life. But in general, the most obsessed was Jimi Hendrix.
Yes.
This was also because it was just absolutely awesome and cool and makes great music. But because I also at the same time started to play guitar myself, he became like a guitar hero in the sense of, wow, I'd like to play like that as well. But I've definitely listened extensively to Jimi Hendrix at that time. I unfortunately don't anymore. I think I probably have, I've listened enough to Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, like an overplayed it sort of thing.
Kind of overplayed it sort of thing.
Yeah.
This, however, is still, if I do, this is in my hand. I'm holding a record, one of those old vinyl things of the Band of Gypsies, which is a live album from recorded at Fillmore East on New Year's Eve, 1969 to 1970, which I would then describe as my favorite Jimi Hendrix album, after listening too much to all the other ones. And I think that to answer you with two answers, I think all my answers are going to be like at least two records, because I'm not the kind of person that can, or two artists or whatever. I can't. I'm a person that can't say this is my favorite artist of all time. I just can't do it, and so
That's
on.
all right. I'll allow it.
So pretty immediately, after Jimi Hendrix, or at the same time with whatever I listened absolutely the most to would also be Pink Floyd. Same again, we've got, the guitar hero, but there's also, obviously the music is different from Jimi Hendrix to Pink Floyd, but there's, I've got so many. These would just go round and round and round and round and round, as they did back in the day. Today, the Spotify playlist goes up and down, up and down. Back in the day, the records went round and round. And again, I'm actually in my hand holding another record, which is Pink Floyd Animals, which would probably be my favorite Pink Floyd album for some strange reason. Maybe it's just got to do with the fact that it's got the best cover ever. What's the name of it? Battersea Power Station.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would have been the two that, as a kid, we're talking, I don't know, early teens, I don't know. There was nothing else I kind of listened to. Obviously, there was the same kind of artists from the time that I would pick out like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and things like that. As you can hear, I was probably more inspired by my dad's record collection than what was on the radio at the time. I guess what was on the radio at the time would have been like, I'm not sure if this was pre-Nirvana or not. But, you know, that there was a lot of other things happening on the radio. A lot of my friends were listening to like, there's metal, there's the explosion of Metallica, and there was, you know, Iron Maiden and all of this kind of stuff. And then in a degree, some hip hop didn't really come until a little bit later in Sweden, I think. But I was kind of stuck in the 60s and 70s.
How did that affect you with your friendship group? Because I had a similar situation when I was in school, where I wasn't being true to myself with what I listened to or what I wanted to listen to. I wanted to listen to what other people listen to try and fit in. Was that difficult for you to do, or were your friends quite accepted and they just like metal and you like Pink Floyd and you just carried on with it?
I think it was a lot more accepted. I think there was also, I mean, I'm going to sound like an old fart. I remember, maybe this is a bit of a pre-construction, but there was still that thing where people were in different camps and it didn't actually matter all that much. So there were still punks. There was a couple of punks in my school. They had the spikes and the leather jackets and the weird spiky hair and everything. And then there was some metalheads, and then there was some skateboarders that only listened to you know, whatever they listened to. I forget. There was some pretty big Swedish bands at that time that did the sort of skate music. And everyone was fine with it. No one really, you know, it was not like there was a fight in between of what other you were supposed to be listening to. But people also were a lot more sort of like particular in what they were doing, and people dressed differently. People listened to different types of music. There was a lot less mainstream, and I can't remember what was like essentially played on the radio in terms of pop music. And you know, apart from Michael Jackson and stuff like that, which probably everyone listened to because Michael Jackson made great music. But there was like more character around, and people were a bit more particular and did their thing. And it was like more cool to just do your thing than it was to do what everyone else was doing.
That's good.
So I didn't really have a problem with it. I think, you know, I bonded with a few others that also thought the same kind of music was cool. But it was never an issue, really.
Lovely. When you're doing your painting for pleasure, or when you're doing stuff for your YouTube channel, do you like to have music on, or do you like to paint in silence?
It goes kind of because my painting often is, I'm going to say, interrupted or different, because most of my painting is making the YouTube videos, so painting miniatures for YouTube videos. And so my mind is in a little bit of a different space where it might be about, okay, so I need to film this little bit, and then I need to move the camera, and then I need to film that little bit. And I'm in a little bit of a different process. However, when there's like now, I've got 10 rats in front of me. It's Skaven clan rats that my son wants to get into Age of Sigmar, and he bought a starter box and he wants to play the Stormcast, and I got all the rats, and so I kind of just want to paint them rather fast so that he doesn't get bored with the fact of waiting. That, you know, it's not like, Dad, I want to get into Age of Sigmar. Great, we can play in a year. You know, that's not.
Yeah.
And so I'm obviously making a video on it because that's kind of how my life works. But then I just sort of paint one in front of the camera, and then I got another 9 to paint before moving on to the next step. And in cases like that, or if I sit at home, I'd say I'm 3 parts. One part is just quiet, because it can be like an unwinding by the end of the day or whatever, just clearing my head, just the fact that I'm doing something with my hands, I'm just painting, and just there's this meditative aspect to it, and then it's just nice to not have any input. I also like listening to audiobooks when I paint, and I also like listening to music. So it's probably divided into three, of both quiet and audiobook and music. But I can only really do the audiobook and the music when I just need to paint something and not think about the video production side of things.
Yeah. Interesting. Right, let's dig into the main section.
Ooh, exciting.
Alex, what is the first album you remember owning?
I had to give that a bit of think, and it's going to be contradictory to what I was saying just earlier about Jimi Hendrix and only listening to things from the 60s. But I believe it was a KLF single. There was an ice cream truck on the front. I tried to find it yesterday, but I didn't have any of my singles. We're back to the fact that these were vinyl singles, the small ones. I must have put them in some different box or something. I couldn't find any of the singles, but it was the a KLF single, and this is still when there was MTV as well, and so I distinctly remember their videos, and at that time there was like I can only remember a few videos. I think it was the KLF videos. There was also a Queen video. I don't know how that was. It had like a steam train in it or something. I don't know.
Recall it. I'm sure somebody out there will message.
Yeah. And obviously, Michael Jackson videos kind of stick to your head because there's such massive productions. But no, a KLF. I can't remember the name of the song. Moo something, Goo Goo Land. I don't know.
Well, I will find it. And if you are listening to this on Spotify, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find all the albums and singles and some artists that Alex has been talking about today as a playlist, so you can have a listen to while his picks are.
And I just
enjoy them that way.
Please do. Also, I know there's a documentary made about the KLF. I don't know if it's findable on YouTube or not, but it's a fascinating phenomenon, and it's so very cool to even if you're not, because the music is very dated from that period of time, but the two guys that are KLF, just their entire story about the whole thing is so fascinating. So a strong recommendation is to check out the documentary about KLF.
Go search that one out as well. Do you remember the first gig that you ever went to?
I had to give that one a big hard think, and I'm not exactly sure, but it was both were with my dad, because I don't know, I was probably brought to some gigs that I can't remember. But it was either the Rolling Stones, they were on a Voodoo Lounge tour.
Wow.
Or it was James Brown. It was one of the two. I think the first was my dad wanted me to, actually go to a proper big concert. This was probably when the Rolling Stones were the ones that did the biggest concerts still. Today everyone does huge concerts with massive productions, but back then I'd say at that point in time it was still the Rolling Stones that were doing the biggest sort of stage productions, I guess. And so I think he wanted me to actually see one of them. I didn't really see much, because when you're a kid and you're standing in an audience and you're slightly too big to be able to sit on your parents' shoulders, you don't really see that much. But the James Brown, I think, was my dad was like, son, this man's going to die soon. You need to see him. I think it was that kind of thing, because I remember it being a pretty terrible show. He was pretty wasted by the end. But
Rolling Stones, what a way to start.
Yeah. I think I've seen them 3 times perhaps by now, but But yeah, but it was one of the two: Rolling Stones or James Brown.
Cool. Can you tell us about a song that made you cry?
My my answer is probably going to be yes and no, because I don't. I'm going to say I'm not nostalgic in the way of
Mm.
of attaching memories to music in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, I know it can be a thing that sometimes something happens in people's lives or whatever, and maybe they heal a little bit by listening to certain types of music or whatever, and then later on in life that music can bring back memories of whatever happened or stuff. But I do cry when I listen to music. I can also cry at concerts. I can also cry at the theater and all kinds of things. But it's always connected to the fact that I get this surge of emotion of just I guess the fact that someone has you know, someone has made this thing.
Yeah.
This is like a product of the awesomeness of humans. Because I've through my work as a photographer and stuff like that, I had a period quite extensively where I traveled quite a bit and sort of documented events and stuff that maybe one doesn't want to be, like war zones and
Yeah.
refugee camps and all of that kind of stuff. And so I've had sort of my fair share of seeing the absolute awfulness that humans are capable of. You know, we're our own worst enemy in so many ways, and it's horrifying what we're capable of doing to each other.
Yeah.
But we're also capable of creating beautiful things like music and art, and you know, even just a awesome performance by an actor on a stage. I can just, you know, I just get emotional just of the fact that that person is doing this in my vicinity. So I can definitely cry to music, but it's just because I think the song is so bloody good and it can change, you know.
Yeah.
So there's no particular like song that makes me sad or happy. It's more just the surge of emotion kind of a thing that expresses itself in a wetting of the eyes.
Sure, I think that's the most beautiful answer. I've done across many different podcasts, about 200
Yeah.
podcasts. I think that's probably the best answer to a question I've ever had.
Well, thank you.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Next question is the hidden gem album, an album that you love that most people probably don't get, or you think that people haven't heard of and they should seek out.
This was a really tricky one actually, because I was like, um, it was, you know, a combination of like being a hidden gem. I think a lot of music that maybe even was big at its time, you know, becomes a hidden gem because people eventually stop listening to it unless it's
Mm.
massive artists. Like the Beatles will never have hidden gems because they won't be hidden. They'll be right there, and you'll have heard them. But there can be other, you know, because I was about, now I'm going to give you several answers. Like I was about to say like Headhunters, Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. I can't remember if I brought that album along. Yeah, I did. It's around here somewhere. It's an awesome cover. And I was going to say, like, you know, because to some people this is an album that they would never have listened to. But if you're into this kind of music, because this is like one of the first sort of proper jazz funk fusion albums. If you're into this, this is like Sergeant Pepper.
Yeah.
So that's not a hidden gem, you know. In a way. So I opted for some weird things actually. I've got, didn't I have a few CDs with me? Yeah. This is an album that I, for some reason, listened a lot to at a period in time, and it's because the storytelling is so vastly different, and it's definitely a particular style. It's sort of blues. This is a gentleman called Jack Dupre, Champion Jack Dupre, and the album is called Blues from the Gutter. And he's got the funniest songs, and they're not actually funny as in they're funny, but we've got a song called the TB Blues, that's tuberculosis. There's the Junkers Blues, which is when he says he can't kick the habit. And there's all these songs that are, it's sort of more in a sort of jazz, bluesy boogie style, but it really is this very graphical stories, but the music is kind of a little bit not happy. I don't know. I just love it. I mean, it's very old. It's very old school. I don't even know when this is from. It would say on the album itself, I guess. Should do. I can't find the date, but you know, this is old blues. But I think that's probably an album that not an awesome amount of people would have listened to, and so I'm going to call it a hidden gem. The other album, as I said, there's always two answers. The other album, I figured I was going to pick this, which is an album called Dimanche à Bamako by Amadou and Mariam. They're a blind couple. The style is sort of a bit sort of Afro-funk-ish.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, that sort of desert vibe. He plays this kind of guitar that is very sort of flowy, and there's a lot of rhythms. But it's produced by Manu Chao, and he really has produced this. It sounds like a Manu Chao kind of album ish. There's a lot of that kind of 90s, synthesizer type drums and all of that kind of stuff, and samples and things. Yeah. And I listened to a lot of this when it was released. It's from 2004. And it was pretty big at the time, I think. They would have had radio play, at least in France and stuff. But I figured that would be a fun sort of hidden gem. I used to listen quite a bit to Manu Chao. A lot of people did back then, and then he kind of disappeared a little bit. But the combination was great for me because it was this sort of familiarity of having listened to Manu Chao, but then getting an introduction to a bit more sort of it's terrible to say African vibes because it's a bloody huge continent, but just getting introduced to a different style of music, I guess.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm loving about this podcast is being introduced to new types of music and to discover new artists and bands. So I've never heard of them before, but if you listen to that one, that sounds really interesting. Thanks for those recommendations.
That's all right.
What do you think is the most played album in your life?
Ooh, I mean, it's going to have to be probably one of the first two because I listened to so much music when I was young. It's probably Dark Side of the Moon, something like that. It would have been going on repeat for such a heavy amount of time. Yeah. But I've always, like, music wise, I've gone through a lot of stages. I was massively into reggae for a time. I then had like a few jazz years. I had a few funk years. It's just, I kind of can't really decide. At the moment, I seem to be in an old white man's American period, which is terribly boring. But it's like the only thing I listen to at the moment seems to be like Tom Petty and Bob Dylan for reasons unknown, really. But that kind of just keeps happening. And then all of a sudden I start listening to something else, and I do that for a couple of years. But just because of how much I listened to those early records early on, I'd probably say Dark Side of the Moon.
Lovely. What's the best live gig you've ever seen?
Ooh. Uh, this is a tricky one, and also sort of a little bit based on my occupation and what I chose to do at that point in time. It's also going to sound a little bit snobbish, I think. But I had probably 10 to 15 years ago, I started this project as a photographer. It was just my own sort of art, kind of an art project, because I was. If we go back to the beginning of it, it started out that I like music, and so I like to see concerts, and so I realized that if I go and take pictures at a concert, I can get in for free.
Interesting.
I just say I'm press, at least at that point in time, So
kids don't go out there now with your phone pretending to be a photographer.
No, exactly. Because I did other work, I had press ID. So I could actually say I was press, because I was press. If you at least in Sweden, if you work, and at that time, I don't know how it is now, like if you have enough press type assignments, you can get a press badge. It just says that you're a press photographer, and then you can go to press conferences and stuff and sit at the front for news and whatever and take pictures. But it also worked at live shows. You just reach out to the organizers and say, write me up on the list. I'm coming to take pictures. And so I used to take quite a, just go to concerts and take pictures of bands on stage, and pretty rapidly got bored with the images, because I kind of realized that you can't see where they are. Every stage in the world looks the same, kind of a thing. Most often it's just a black drape, and then there's some lights, and then there's a drum kit and some speakers, and then there's someone howling into a microphone in front of it, and they can, if it's shot in Stockholm or Milan or London or whatever, no one really knows it. They all look the same.
Yeah.
And so I developed this idea of it would be really cool to sort of, in a way, document what was going on in Stockholm, sort of on the live scene a little bit, I guess, a bit of an alternative live scene, by trying to shoot a portrait of the musician or the artist instead of a picture from the show. So I started reaching out to management and stuff, just randomly asking, would so-and-so be okay if I met up like at soundcheck or something like that and just took a portrait of them? And a surprising amount of people said yes initially, and then I could use those images to get help. So I started to get help from the actual venues. So when they booked an artist, they would be like, we have a photographer that usually comes here and shoots a portrait. Here's a few of his pictures. Would you be okay if this happens here? And so it was already a part of the deal when like the people booking the artist would mention it. So then I could just rock up to these places and take pictures of artists. I guess one of my regrets was, it was one of the places there was this young boy. No, I'm exaggerating. But Ed Sheeran was playing before he was massive in this club, and I was like, what the fuck is this? It's just some boy with a guitar. I've seen so many boys with guitars, troubadour kind of a thing. So I was like, I'm not going to go there tonight. I'll go there tomorrow, and there's this cool jazz fellow playing instead. And so I turned down my probably only chance in this lifetime to shoot a portrait of Ed Sheeran. But anyway, because of this, I went to so many shows, because I was taking, it was mainly portraits of, I guess, I'm not going to say alternative acts, but there was a lot of jazz and smaller bands, but still bands that would tour. I have an extensive list. There's also a lot of like Swedish stuff. But saw some great things, and I think took a lot of nice portraits. But there was two instances that in regards to the best live gig, and one was Nene Cherry was about to release a new album with a jazz group called The Thing. So it's this sort of weird free jazz kind of a thing. There's a saxophone player called Mats Gustafsson, which was the sort of front man of that in a way. They were a trio, and then it was Cherry sort of singing on top of that, and they just made an album, which is very sort of alternative. You know, it's not the sort of Cherry pop thing. It was very much weird. No, I'm going to say weird jazz and all of that. And they were going to play their sort of. It was a very small stage, so it was releasing the album, but mainly for friends and things like that. And they'd set up, and they were going to start the show, and then there was this massive power cut in that entire area of the city. So someone, you know, dug a hole through a big cable or anything, and it was like, there's no power at all. And they were just going to start the show. And they figured that this is not going to get fixed in time. So they decided the venue like lit up candles absolutely everywhere. And they decided to do this gig acoustic.
Oh, wow.
Which is really difficult if you're, you know, when you don't even have a PA to sing through.
Yeah.
And then you've got like, so they had to find a stand-up bass for the bass guy instead of the electric bass. The drummer had to like play real soft.
Yeah.
And the usually pretty intense saxophone had to be soft, and she really had to like scream to be heard. And it was such a great show. And it was just one of those moments that, you know, it becomes a moment that you realize like this kind of show will never happen again. It's only these 60 people in the room that get to see it. And because of having seeing so many live shows, that just became so special. The other one was a similar situation, but still with electricity going on. But I just met up with an artist called Bilal. He's a pretty big, I guess you could call it jazz singer, but it's very hip hop style jazz, I guess, to explain it in sort of layman's terms. It's also kind of, you know, it's a bit difficult kind of music, I guess. But he's awesome. And I'd met him up and I'd shot his portrait, and then I stayed to see the show after. And I'd listened to the music, but I'd never seen the show. And it just absolutely blew me away what he was doing on stage with his voice and the presence on stage. And it was like, I haven't even seen the most extreme rock artist doing the, you know, he was miles away in his presence on stage. And so I guess on a good day, if you are into that kind of music and you see Bilal is playing in town, I'd go see the show.
I'll get him on the podcast as well. This is becoming a really good interview, because I love it when I enjoy it when I have something in common. I can say, oh yeah, I like this. I like when I was speaking to my friend as a DJ.
Yeah.
But also just be able to listen and discover new things. Brilliant. So I'm making all my notes as we go.
Lovely. And I mean, I think in short, the about live shows, I realized I don't really at all enjoy big shows. I don't really get anything out of seeing bands in stadiums anymore. It's just they're so far away. The production level of everything is so high. There's so many like special effects and screens and concepts, art concepts, and all of this. And fine, Pink Floyd, The Wall, that was actually a suitable concept, but just the concept of doing things to impress, to give people an experience, which is fine. I know people love this. But for me, being like 2.5 meters, I can just touch the people on stage if I want to. I can see them sweat. I can see everything. I can actually hear the drums live. That, you know, when there's not more than 1 to 500 people in a place, I think that's where I have my best live experiences.
Yeah. Are there any intimate venues like that around Stockholm that you know of?
There's less now, actually. Um, and unfortunately, I don't go out much. I haven't been to a concert in years, to be honest. But I think as well, during the pandemic, before the pandemic, there was I could have given you a list of 5, 6 places to go to. Now I don't really know all that many, because they just had to shut down. They couldn't afford to not have people. It was not, because none of these places were making money. They were run by people that just wanted to book their favorite artists and show them to the world, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It was never, and after the pandemic, that's changed, and it's now, at least that's the feeling I get in a lot of cases. The places where you go to get to see artists is places that can make money out of it. The people that were booking artists, like before the pandemic, they don't really have the energy to go back to it, and the climate, I think, has changed a little bit.
Yeah. What a shame. What a shame. Next question then is, was there any particular artist or band or album or record that kind of shaped who you are? Was there like some like musician out there that set you off in a different direction to where you thought you were possibly heading?
I don't really think so. I have one example, which is a weird example, but first, I think in general, however much I've actually been into music or am into music, and on some levels probably a lot more than many others, it's never been a manic thing. I've never been into it that deep that it's sort of, that I feel that it's changed me. I can say that a lot of other things around me would have done that. My parents would have done that. My kid would have done that. Relationships would have done that. But music, I can't really feel that I can say that there is specifics that has sort of changed me. What has changed me, which was what we talked about before. I'm going to show you another record that I found actually in the collection at home, which I just wanted to show you. This is an album by, I guess if you translate it, the band name would be Rat, but in Swedish it's called Råtta. I can type that out to you, so you get it right. This is an album that I've produced and recorded and stuff. It says in 2017. There you go. And when I started to record music, that totally changed my perception of music. And I have a very hard time listening to music in the same way as I did before I recorded music.
Yeah.
And so that very much has changed my relationship to music. Because if I listen to a song now, I go, they're using this guitar through that amplifier. I wonder if they're singing through this microphone. Oh, there's a reverb. They've placed it on the left side. And then there's a delay going down the middle. And then, wow, that's a huge room sound on those drums, and so on and so forth. And there's only a few moments where that disappears and I actually can just relax and hear the song.
Yeah, I totally get that.
And sometimes it can be a combination. Because I have the same with production as well. So I can go like, wow, that's a really impressive chorus, which is maybe not the things you should be having in your head sometimes when you're listening to music, because you miss out on the experience of just experiencing a song for what it is. And you start taking it apart into all these little pieces, identifying all the little pieces of the songs out of a production perspective. And I have a very hard time letting go of that, which I think sometimes is a shame. So I feel that that's something that's being part of the process of making music. has definitely changed my life in how I appreciated music. I can no longer really appreciate music in the same way as I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Like when I do the audio post-production, when you sort of see how sound is done and designed and made, when you're watching a show, sometimes you start to notice things and it kind of takes you out. I find that the best ones for me are when I don't think about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it completely has me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the only times I get that real true sort of, I think, appreciation of a song is live. Because I guess I've never done live production, so so I can just go, oh, it's a little bit bright, or it's a little bit, that hurt the ears a bit, but
Yeah.
I don't. Otherwise, I'm just entranced by the fact that it's happening in front of me right now.
Yeah.
And then you can appreciate the song. But listening to albums has kind of a little bit become a different kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. The mixtape test. Anyone that's read High Fidelity or seen the movie High Fidelity will know the importance of musical structure for mixtapes. Alex, if you were making a mixtape for someone special, what is the first track on that tape?
Wildflowers by Tom Petty. It's a beautiful song.
Is it for anyone in particular, or do you want to reveal that, or do you want to keep it?
No, I mean it's just I don't know. One can always interpret songs differently. I guess it's a love song, but it's also a song about setting the kind of cliche to love someone. You have to set them free. So I mean, if you just the feel of it, it's definitely something you'd put on a mixtape to someone that you're in love with. But it could also just not have to be that. It could also just be a very good friend, something.
Yeah, cool. Fantasy band, DJ, or hip hop crew lineup. So you've got whatever you want to create here as your mishmash of musicals. So Alex, you're at this 60-person capacity venue on the outskirts of Stockholm.
Yeah.
Your band playing tonight consists of
Miles Davis and Lee Perry.
Just the two of them?
Yeah.
Let's go. I'll see you there at 8:00. Why those two?
No, I had a hard time with this one because I'm unfortunately not. I take things way too seriously a lot of the time, and I thought about it and I was like, well, that's a great bass player, and then I was like, no, but they're only great because they're in the band that they're already in. They'd probably be terrible in some other band. And so then I just try to think of the most extreme combination of people of their time and place, and I don't know. It just popped into my head that if there ever would have been an album made by Miles Davis and Lee Perry, it would be in my record collection.
Yeah, mine would have been Angels and Airwaves, Tom DeLonge, Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker, and then Mark Hoppus from Plus 44 on bass. But then they went and got back together anyway. So yeah, that's the only way I could ever think of getting mine to gel and work. Otherwise, it's just going to sound like a car crash because I'll just so many different bands and so many different musicians from each band.
But it's so funny when because I've never played I've played in bands since I was a teenager, but it's always just been for the fun of it. It's never been there's never been that serious kind of I want to be in a band and be successful vibe. There's never been that. But you immediately notice when you play with people or certain people, or someone leaves and someone new comes in, like if it works or if it doesn't work. At least if you play your own material, or someone's writing songs and then someone starts playing and you go like, that fits beautifully in, and then you play something and everybody thinks it just sounds great, and you made a song, and then you switch some people out and you're like, oh, it sounds terrible, even though if people are as skilled or whatever, or they're into the same kind of music, and so it's become kind of apparent to me, if you sort of take production and producers and solo artists and all of that out of the equation, if you just stick to the good old band thing, then it's so much about how those people interact with each other and work to, that make the music into what it is, I think.
Yeah. Nice. Is there a song that teleports you back to a time or a place that really makes you smile?
Yes. This is actually back to the Lee Perry I just mentioned. I remember, this is a bit of a long story of my life, I guess, but as a very young child, from the age of 4 to about the age of 8, I lived in Botswana, in southern parts of Africa, and at that time there was apartheid in South Africa, and so we were never able to, we didn't go into South Africa. But then I think it was actually at the sort of millennia shift between 99 and 2000. I went back with my parents, because they wanted to go to South Africa, because they'd never been to South Africa, even if they'd lived in a neighboring country for 4 years. And I can't remember how old I was, but it would have been late teens, maybe, something like that. And you're not always the most pleasant person in your late teens, I guess. I wasn't unpleasant, but it was just, it was cool to go, but I was I was in my own world quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I've gotten this tape from a friend, a cassette, which had Lee Perry, Super Ape. The album's called Super Ape. It's the beginning of what we call dub.
Yeah.
And I would force my parents to have that on the car stereo throughout those 3 weeks driving a car around South Africa. It was just going round and round and round and round, and my parents were driven mad by this strange Jamaican madman. And to me, it just became like the sound. I was looking out the window and you see the world passing by outside, and the soundtrack was this Lee Perry tape that a friend had transferred from probably a CD to a tape for me. And I can just think back on that and just there's funny layers in there of just where you're at in your life, and you just and just the feeling of very much seeing the world through a soundtrack at that point in time.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. Lovely stuff. Right then. Tonight we're having a house party. I've got nothing to play. Alex, what is the album recommendation for this evening?
Well, I kind of want to change the pace here, just to sort of widen our views. And so, as a first song, I'd play Motorhead, Overkill, just to get the mood right.
Yeah,
it's one of my
expecting that one.
One of the surprises of it was my son. It's gotten me into heavy music. He's 10.
Yeah,
and for some reason, I mean, it goes up and down. He listens to what I would say crap a lot of the time as well. But whatever sort of radio songs, and he's gotten into 50 Cent and Eminem, stuff like that. But also, as half of his head is a metal head, so I had to buy him Metallica records and Motorhead records and stuff like that. And I have to admit to the fact that I think Lemmy is a brilliant songwriter and things. So at times when I need a bit of a break from the world, I listen to Motorhead. And I figured Overkill would be a good way to start a party.
Yeah, damn right. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely know that you're on the decks there we're into the quick fire round. Pew pew.
Mm.
So if you were a wrestler or a boxer or you were involved in some sort of sport, what would your entrance music or walk-up music be? One track that lets people know you're doing.
Um, yeah, I had a hard time associating with this because I would. Uh, I've never been in a fight in my entire life. So the prospect of getting into a fight is kind of scary. So I took the opposite approach, and I thought of a song um, by um, Peter Tosh,
Okay.
which is reggae. He made an album called Bush Doctor. I think it's late '80s, and the first song on that album is a very, I'd have to say, weird, but also kind of cute duet with Mick Jagger.
Right.
Yeah, and it's called what is it called? Don't Look Back. I think the song's called Don't Look Back. And yeah, you'll have to listen to it and then imagine me walking through the crowd into a wrestling game.
Yeah. I'm now trying to think of wrestling moves that could be miniature related, like the dry bush elbow from the top rope and the the sprue glue choke out hold.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite cover song?
Um, that was a good question. Probably "Whiskey in the Jar" by Thin Lizzy.
Ooh, nice.
I
I
don't know. I don't know if you'd call that a cover song because I mean, it essentially strives from like a folk song, doesn't it? Like, but
I
I
think
don't
I've
know.
only ever heard the Metallica version of it.
Yeah, I mean, Metallica made it because Thin Lizzy made it, and Thin Lizzy
Hmm.
made it because someone else made it, and they did it because someone else did it. I don't know who actually wrote the song,
I'll try and find that out as well.
but it's like it was probably played around pubs on Ireland a lot longer
Yeah,
before Thin Lizzy did it.
cool.
That's my view of the thing anyway.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't do karaoke.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I know.
Have you never done it?
No.
Wow. Well, if you
Yeah.
ever find yourself in Manchester again, I know several
Yeah.
several bars that do karaoke.
I
Uh,
have I have fond memories of karaoke,
I
but
don't.
no,
It's
yeah,
awful.
yeah. Mine might be different because I was in when I was after like high school. I worked for a year and saved up money, and then I went traveling, and I spent a month or more in Vietnam,
Yeah.
among other places. And they do karaoke like chilling, sitting down reading a book, and they do
Hmm.
karaoke. So you walk down the street and see in people's windows, and they'd be sitting alone in a couch in front of a TV singing karaoke, and then walk past the next place, and there was another person like waiting for the news to start on the telly and just sang some karaoke before it started. It's like my mental image of karaoke completely changed because there it become this thing you do when you just want to, you're a bit bored, you don't really know what to do, so you sit down and you sing karaoke by yourself.
That's weird,
Mm.
but I love it.
And none of them could sing,
Well, that's the
and
point of karaoke, isn't it?
yeah.
You can't sing, so you do karaoke.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Wow, what a thing. That must have been interesting to see, but also really, really bizarre if you didn't know what was going on.
it was it was strange, but it was fun trip. It was that whole sort of backpacking thing, but it was still early enough to not, you know, uh, there was still very little development and things happen. You actually went to a country and kind of saw that country, and not so much. Yeah, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah. We've already talked about the first song you play at a house party, the Motorhead.
Mm.
But also, what would the last song be to close out your DJ set to send people home happy?
A song called "Bandit" by Neil Young.
Neil Young. My wife will definitely know that one.
Hmm.
I'm sure that'll be banging out later on. Do you have a guilty pleasure track that you secretly love? Or
Um, I mean, not that much in a way. I think um, I'm not really guilty of any music I listen to. I have, um, for reasons unknown, I've started to listen to like when I'm at home, and I've gotten into this thing where, because of what we talked about earlier with the music production thing, of not being able to listen to music without listening to production, I've started to listen to quite a lot of classical music because I have no idea about classical music production. It's
yeah,
just violins and shit. But I know nothing about it. People say, "Oh, do you like Mozart or Bach or whatever symphony?" And I've got no idea. I just turn on like classical radio, and then sometimes I enjoy it, and sometimes I don't enjoy it. But I've also been started to listen to this kind of music. In my hand, I'm holding a Sarah Vaughan record. Um, this must be a really old record. This must be like 50s or something.
yeah,
And this is like, it's just what people would have listened to in the States when they were drinking their martini on a Friday afternoon, and it's very harmless. The sort of imagine the entire era of like Frank Sinatra and stuff, but I just really like the female singers because
yeah,
that's always one of the things that come to haunt me. Is I realize I listen a lot to men, um, but yeah, I'm not going to call it a something I'm guilty about. It's just something, I probably wouldn't maybe play it if someone else was around.
yeah.
It just sort of calms me a little bit in a strange way, and it's very innocent, I guess, and yeah. So Sarah Vaughan, it's lovely stuff.
Yeah, I'll check that out too. So we're getting towards the end of the interview, but
Mm.
there's just what I couldn't let you go without asking you. Apologies, music fans, but this one's about minis. What does a board game night look like at your house?
Um,
Or
usually
games
it's
night, I should say.
yeah, usually it's a bit invisible, unfortunately. I play way too little games, as I can't really seem to prioritize uh, having that kind of spare time. Um, most of the time when I play games, I go to a friend's house
Mm,
um, because he's massively into playing war games, and so he has a pretty large flat, and he just has everything in his flat. So you can pretty much play any game. I'm not sure how many 40k armies or Age of Sigmar armies he has, but it's like wherever, if you open a cupboard, it's like you're in the kitchen and you open a cupboard and it's like, is there a glass? No, there's a 40k army. It's kind of a bit like that.
the Tau
Uh,
Empire, where the cereal bowl should be.
yeah. So I usually play with him, and it's not like there's not like there's music and drinks and stuff like that. It's pretty efficient. It's like we set up, all the lamps are on, we play the game, and now I'm just kind of working hard on discreetly trying to get my son into the thing,
Yeah,
so that to be able to play more at home.
ten's a good age to get into.
Yeah, and he kind of wants to get into Age of Sigmar, and we're going to try. I'm not sure if it's going to work for him. He is rather competitive, and Age of Sigmar can get very competitive, and if you can get pretty mad at things because of just the way the game is shaped. But I'm also
Yeah,
trying to work on some other games, like I've transformed some. There's a game called the Silver Bayonet, which in theory is like Napoleonic era, but with a touch of fantasy in it. So you're supposed to play a small group of monster hunters that go out and try and like kill goblins or whatever. But I've done a switch, so instead it's going to be a small warband of orcs that go out and kill people, because that's what orcs do.
Yes.
But that game you can play co-op, so him and me can actually be on the orc team,
Yeah.
and then you just kind of a bit more role play game-ish, I guess. You get some random foes on the way, and you try and get the treasure or whatever you're gonna do.
Yeah. That's
I
good.
think that'll suit a little bit better, because then we can be on the same side instead of trying to have to fight each other.
Yeah. I think those kind of cooperative games are really good for getting young kids into
Yeah.
it. Like we play a lot of Zombicide 2.0 at home.
Yep.
It's a family
Yep.
game, and we love it. Always love it. It's been a regular on our table for a long time. And every now and then, I'll take the little Nuts Element games in Stockport, and
Yep.
we'll play some Warcry. Or we recently had a try of Marvel Crisis Protocol and some
Yep.
Star Wars Shatterpoint. But
Yep.
I think the smaller contained games, and then always going back to the co-op ones are the way forward at the moment. So especially until he sort of develops his own identity with his gaming. He is a big Eldari fan though in Warhammer.
Oh, that's cool.
I need to try and sort that out.
Yeah.
Orcs only. It's the orc rule.
Orcs only. Yeah.
Exactly. What is your all-time favorite board game and your current favorite board game?
I'm gonna have to jump into like the really not actually mini games. I think my favorite games are the favorite games they are because I actually get to play them with like my family and my son. And it's the really boring basic ones that don't even fit into this sort of Warhammer. Like it's the kind of games everyone can get, which is like Cluedo.
Yeah.
Great game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I had this period where I thought, I'm going to get into board games because there's so much. I had a vision of people enjoying themselves around the table, and you can get like ordinary people in to play board games. And the first one I got was, is it called Colonizing Mars or something like that?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to interpret those rules. Like they're worse than, it'd be easier to get them into play Age of Sigmar. Like, so I got another one, and the rules again. I was like, I don't even know where to start. I need to, I just spent hours and hours trying to read the rules. So essentially, the favorite games are the people you play with other people, and I haven't been able to get people into playing maybe the things that I envision them playing, which would be maybe the cooler things. People play Pandemic or whatever and stuff like that, and I have a hard time getting past the reading, interpreting the rules side of things. So it's those really basic things you played as a kid.
Yeah. Sometimes those are the best ones. The ones that are the challenging. We played quite a bit of Catan. So
that's fun. Yeah. Played that one as well.
Great minis to paint as well. A little wooden house. For you.
Yeah.
Right, and Alex, guess what? We made it to the end of
the
show.
Made it.
We've made it to the end. What is coming up for you? Any projects you've got on the go, or any videos that you're working on that you want to get us excited about?
Well, as I said previously, currently I'm working on painting some rats, some Skaven, and I actually had to give this a bit of a think because I'm normally a painter that, my entire sort of YouTube endeavor has always been the fact. Well, it started with the fact that I got this hobby, which is a hobby I had as a kid, and I'm not really sure how I got into it. I think I think it was one of those stores. They don't really exist anymore, but there used to be stores when you went in and they had like fantasy swords and magic crystals and like jewelry for occultists, you know, and
Yeah.
drapes everywhere and that kind of stuff. And somewhere in that store they had miniatures. I think it was Ral Partha miniatures. It was like Lord of the Rings miniatures. And my dad was at the time, I think, reading the Lord of the Rings for me. So I was, you know, as a small kid. And so there was these little tiny miniatures of hobbits and dwarves and whatnot. I think that's probably what got me into it. And then it was just, you know, the steady sort of rise of you find the game store that sells the Warhammer and everything, and then at some point I fell out of it and did other things for the majority of my life up until now. And then I got back into it, I think, when I was home with my son when he was small and needed something to do at night when he'd woken me up and then fallen back asleep and I couldn't. And then I realized, you know, I know how to film things. I got lots of cameras and stuff. I could try start making YouTube videos, and that especially became a thing during the pandemic because then I didn't have any work pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's always just been based on the fact that I'm doing my hobby, and then I film that and try and turn that into a video. I never have an idea of like, this would be a video that people will watch. Like, I don't really invent topics that are based on the fact that I do YouTube, which is a very stupid way of doing YouTube, because if you want to kind of be successful on YouTube, then you figure out what others are interested in at the moment, and that's what you make videos on, or you see other people making videos that are successful and you just essentially copy the topic. And you know, it's probably like this in all hobbies, but if you look at miniature painting, there's always going to be these things that come along already. All of a sudden there's this technique, like we had something called Slapshot show up, and all of a sudden every YouTuber starts making videos on Slapshot because they realize that people are interested in this. Or some company releases a new set of miniatures or a new game, and everyone, you know, just try to stay with what is fresh, because that's what the majority will watch. That's simply how it works. But for me, I've always just been like, I'm interested in this game over here right now, so that's what the video will be about. I don't have any other way of doing it really mentally. And so now the rats, that's because my son wanted to get into Age of Sigmar, and he picked that, you know, the starter box, and there was rats, and he gave them to me, so I need to paint them, so that will be the video. And that's sort of how it continues. I don't really have future videos planned as much. Obviously, sometimes there can be sponsors. You know, I do sponsored videos. Companies reach out and say, you know, we're releasing this product. Can you make a video on it? And I do them, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be able to pay the bills or this cost, or pay myself anything at all if it wasn't for sponsored videos. But the majority is just what I'm working on at the moment. So right now with the rats, because I need to get them on the table fast before my son gets bored, I'm trying to figure out smart ways of getting good results relatively fast. So the topic will be painting rats relatively fast, you know, and that's just sort of how it works. But the video after that, I don't even know what it's going to be until I wake up one morning and realize this is what I'm doing with my hobby today.
Yeah. That's one of the things we talked about before we started recording. It's one of the things that I love about your channel is I've watched since I got into the hobby, and it's been the 2 channels that stayed constant throughout my hobby journey, because you don't seem to follow trends. You paint what you're passionate about, and it really is such a lovely channel to watch and enjoy, because the content always feels personal and not like it's being mass produced on demand. Makes sense.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
It's just refreshing, and your technique and your art in itself. I'll link Alex's YouTube channel in the show notes. You really have to go and check out yourself, because when you realize that these things are about half the size of your thumb, and you look at the results that Alex is capable of, and lots of other miniature painters are capable of. Like you were saying before about how emotional you get and moved by how people are able to make music. I look at some of the art that you produced on those little plastic figures, and it absolutely blows my mind that that a human being can create such beautiful works of art on something so small. It's incredible. Yeah, Alex, your channel is fantastic. Long may it continue.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's very kind words. As I said, it's a bit, I wouldn't recommend, well, obviously you should always do what you want, but there's way to be, and if one is after, trying to do something successful, and I don't know if I'd recommend my way of doing things if that is what one is after, because shortcuts could be taken. I think, I'm just, this touches music as well, but hobbies in general are just very important. Any hobby, it can be good for so many things, as in just having some time to clear your head, or just having this interest that when you're into it, you leave all the other things that might be bothering you outside. But even just the fact of, with like these kind of hobbies that are actually tentative, I guess you'd call it. I think we're losing out on quite a lot of things as humans, based on the way we live our lives right now in the sort of Western world, that are actually important to you as a human, which is like doing things with your hands, and in a way, not necessarily creating art, but painting something or making something without the pressure of results, just as an outlet, is, I think, very important. There's also obviously the social side of doing a hobby, that you might be able to do it with others, or you can connect with others through your hobby. But I think it's something we forget, that even regardless how little time we have, and you pick up the kids from school and you go home and you cook dinner, and all you want to do is, with the rest of your evening, is sit and watch some shit on the television for 2 hours before you go to bed. At least, taking half an hour out of that time, or 20 minutes out of that time, and putting that into a hobby, I think is very valuable, to sort of stay human.
Yeah. What a really powerful way to end the episode. Alex, thank you very much again for sharing the soundtrack of your life so far. I loved hearing about the karaoke in Vietnam, and just about how moved you are by the music. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And why not share it with someone else who loves music as much as you do? You can also reach me on Facebook by looking for Life in Stereo Podcast. Just look for the chimp with the headphones. And thanks again for listening. Until next time, keep spinning the records that make your life sing.